Good evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And this is going to be our instantly after the episode reaction discussion review of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3, the funeral episode. Actually, this one's called The Path. As they just said in the post-credit making of
After show
thing, that this actually... no, I don't... Maybe later. My computer's got things popping up. This episode gives us the chance to something that we can't do in the game. In the game, after... Spoilers, by the way. After Joel gets killed, we don't have a chance to stop, mourn, process, whatever.
Right.
We're right into gameplay.
Right, because it's a game.
It's a game. It's game mechanics and whatever.
Yeah.
And that's... one of the things I was very interested in how they were going to do, what they were going to do, and how they were going to do it. So when they said, we have a chance now to do something we didn't get to do in the game, and that was actually mourn Joel.
Right. And I had said, like at the beginning of this episode, that I was curious as to which way they were going to go. Whether they were going to do the... Now, we didn't get a funeral. We got the aftermath, kind of.
Yeah.
A month later, whatever.
3 months later.
3 months later.
Yeah, 3
okay,
months
so, and Ellie's, been in the hospital for quite a while. But kind of the funeral. Or were they going to immediately jump to Abby and then come back in the next episode and do what they did in this one? And I still think that really either way would have worked.
Yeah.
Because you could have, because there was such a jump in time that you could have spent this episode, that 3 months with Abby and then come back. But so we know that we're going to get, because in the game, I guess you do start to play as Abby for a while. I was just going to bring that up,
yeah.
So, and they talked about it, I think, in last episode's after party.
After whatever that was last week.
After funeral, after wake, that we were going to spend time with Abby. So
yeah.
I don't know if that it's going to be the next one now, because they've kind of set up. I don't know.
This is where those of us who played the game are going to start. It's going to start to deviate, I think, a lot from the everything that happens with Joel moving forward, because we know we have another season coming, and we know for that they've said that we're not going to go beyond
the game. Yeah.
The game.
So the second game is actually going to be two seasons.
And there's a lot that happens in the second game where you could use 2 seasons to actually tell a lot of what's going on.
So they can take their time.
Because you need to spend, if it's going to be 7 episodes each season, you need to spend 5 episodes with Abby. Just to kind of get to a point that you get to in the game with Abby. Once you kill Joel in the game, or once Abby kills Joel in the game, you spend a good 3 or 4 hours playing as Abby and living her life. And there's flashback scenes, and there's some back and forth storytelling wise between what happens in Seattle from Ellie's point of view and what happens from Abby's point of view.
Right.
And how we everything kind of merges at one point in time. I'm actually rewatching the story mode right now, and just to kind of because I only played up to day 1 of Ellie and Seattle in the second game. And it wasn't because of the story. The story I found very compelling. The gameplay mechanics were making me angry.
He does get angry at his... I hear yelling.
Yeah. Yeah. They have been very forthcoming. Craig and Neil have been very forthcoming that they were not going to follow the game.
Yeah.
The second, the
Yeah.
first season. We watch a lot of British TV over the weekend. The first season stays pretty faithful to the actual arc, the actual locations and everything. They change a couple of things just for logistics wise for filming, and they change a couple of things in the first season.
Well, the Frank and
Right, because they had the opportunity to tell this a more advanced story.
Right.
This time, they've been very forthcoming. From the day the last episode dropped, and everybody started asking who played the game, "What are you going to do about that scene?" A lot of us thought that they were going, and they talked about how we're not going to be, we're not going to follow the game verbatim. We're going to take liberties.
Right.
We're going to make decisions that are different than what the game makes. Partly because of gameplay, partly because they have the time to do what they did in this episode to kind of tell beyond.
Well, and you, I appreciate that, because I think that's one thing that filmmakers typically, this is the first series that we've gotten based on a game, right? Everything else before now has been
yeah, pretty much, yeah,
a movie.
Yeah,
I think that's something that the filmmakers don't take into consideration, is that playing a game and watching a show or a movie are completely different. One is active and one is passive.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
when you're playing a game, you know, you got your headphones on and you're moving your character around, you are immersed in that. And so you would feel things that if you were just watching somebody playing that game, you might not necessarily feel as deeply, you know, about. So I appreciate that. I think they've taken that way more into consideration, that in order, because they've said you're not, like, right now you're Team Ellie, right?
Right.
You were
100%.
Team Joel and Ellie, even though they were a little gray, but you were still on their side. And right now you're still on their side, but they want you to understand that everybody makes choices, and everybody has different experiences that bring them to the place where they're at.
Yep.
And so now you need to go see Ellie's side of, or Abby's side of it to understand. I mean,
see, it's not easy, right?
yeah, Ellie, Abby. But you know, I mean, I can understand. I mean, I don't think I would go to the extreme savagery that she did, but I can understand that if somebody killed your dad, pretty much from what you're being told and what we saw in cold blood. I mean, he had a reason, but he was a doctor. He wasn't holding a gun to him, and he just shot him. That you would be very angry, and you would want to kill the person that did it. So they're just trying to get you to not necessarily see both sides, but understand how everybody is getting to where they got to.
One of the things that happens in this episode that I actually like called out when they did it was they had this town hall meeting. Ellie and Dina go to Tommy and say, "Hey, this is what we're doing."
Yep.
And Tommy said, "We have to go to the council because they want to get a team of 16."
Which makes sense.
Which makes complete sense. I totally understand. But that town hall doesn't happen in the game.
Oh, okay.
Because we don't have the time to have a debate in the game and a vote.
Yeah.
You want to get to the next fight scene.
Right.
So to have this opportunity to have this, they've already set up the commune, the community, making decisions for the community.
Yeah.
Actual communism.
Yes.
Actually properly used communism. They have to go back and kind of talk, like, use that. And so they have to have this time. So that whole sequence doesn't happen in the game, but in that, the council votes, what was it, 8-3 no?
Yeah.
And the 3 yeses without being told, are Tommy, obviously, because he's ready to go.
Yeah.
Jesse, because Jesse is on Dina and Ellie's side. And Maria, who, because of Ellie's speech, she used to be a prosecutor?
Yeah.
An attorney,
Yeah.
at least?
Attorney, yeah.
And she understands that what Ellie was presenting is justice and not whatever. But the other side was to to forgive and forget, or to not take that extra step of violence and revenge on other people.
Right.
And the circle of violence, the circle of actually ramifications of other people's actions and overreacting, all of that is what they've been talking about in both of these series from jump.
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, it's so, people are just messy. Humankind
Yeah.
is just messy.
Yeah.
Because if in a situation like what has happened, civilization has fallen apart, your options are to be, vigilante justice, basically, or Fedra. And you can see how Fedra went wrong, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of
That's what the whole Kansas City part was last season.
right. But that's what we have today for the most part in society. We have a governing body that handles justice. And if you do something wrong, like in the Fedra camp, if you do something wrong, then Fedra is going to put you in jail or give you a trial or whatever. But you see how that went wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And there are probably instances where it was okay, but for the most part it wasn't. And then you have the vigilante side, which is how everybody outside of the Fedra camps are living, and that's not any better because the killing just keeps, well, now I have to take, like, Ellie's going to kill Abby, and then somebody's going to need to take out revenge on Ellie for killing Abby, and then somebody's got to take out revenge on the person that killed Ellie, and it's just
it's the circle of violence that they have been talking about the entire way.
Yeah.
And I one of the reasons why I love this show so much is Craig and Neil have been very open about saying people are messy.
Yeah.
It's not a black and white issue. There's more gray in this world in discussing things. And I bring that up because we have to talk about how Seth is the one who was the bigot at the New Year's party in episode 1, but is the loudest voice in the room at the town hall meeting to stand up for Ellie to go to have them go to Seattle to get revenge on the attack on how he put it was, one of ours was taken from us from somebody from the outside. How do we not go seek justice and revenge for that?
Right.
And he's not wrong. I don't think he's necessarily right either because that's, again, the circle of violence. But the forgive and forget thing doesn't work either.
Right. He points that out.
Yeah.
That if we don't stand up for ourselves, then it's just going to happen again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but it's just like I don't. There's just no answer. There's no right answer.
There's no right answer, and my answer and her answer might be completely different. And my answer and her answer could be completely different depending on what time of the day, if we've had something to eat.
Right.
And
you see that too because when we're actually going to talk about the show, when
we are talking about the show.
Well, you're right, but not what actually happens. So Ellie and Dina, the council votes no, and they're like, well, we're going anyway. And of course, which I find that interesting too, that because Ellie and Dina could have just gone. They didn't have to take it to the council. And I think that the reason why the showrunners chose to do that was because there were other people with stakes in this besides just Ellie.
Yeah.
And
I was going to bring that up too.
You know, you think, oh, it's just Ellie's fight, and then Dina says, I loved him too, and Tommy, you know, I loved him too, right? So it kind of is snowballing on this. Oh yeah, it's not just Ellie's fight. So that's the bringing it to the council kind of helps you see that
Yeah.
Joel's death doesn't just affect Ellie; it affects a lot of people.
And the one woman brought up that it wasn't just Joel we lost that night.
Right.
Even though it was an attack by the infected on Jackson, she brings up, I lost my sister that night.
Yeah.
And Seth brings up, I got shot by friendly fire. Now, it might have been on purpose, but, you know, whatever. but her bringing that up is like, it's not just, it wasn't just that you lost Joel. We all lost somebody.
Right.
And so, if we leave 16 people off of our defenses...
Yeah, and that was a completely valid concern. I mean, I absolutely agree. But I was going to say that Ellie is, or maybe the showrunners, are helping to justify her circle of violence by showing you what happened to what were they called? The
Scarred.
The Scarred?
Did you talk about the people on the
Yeah,
path?
yeah.
The Scarred.
So you literally have no idea what happened to them. It could have been any number of people. Ellie deduces it wasn't Fedra because there's a bunch of different kinds of ammo. Okay, I don't... Sure. Like, was Fedra... Did they have a monopoly on one specific gun?
Right.
I mean, I don't know how you tell that from that. But they could kind of use that... You know, somebody wiped out this whole group of people, including a father and daughter.
Right.
You know, again, this whole thing is like two people, father and daughter relationships, not necessarily father and daughter, but that kind of relationship. So they're going to use that as more fuel to their more reason, more justification to go after them.
I'm trying to think of another example of where they saw something and they just, because they already have it in their mind.
Yeah, it's like a preconceived notion.
That preconceived notion that because I think this way already, here I'm just looking for anything is a clue towards that.
Yep.
And
it's confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. That's the thing. I'm writing a book, and there's a whole section of the book that's dealing with that. But ultimately, what Ellie has to come to grips with is she Joel 2.0, or is she her own person? Because the first two episodes, especially the first episode, established that she is her own. She's trying to be her own person away from her parent, and he stepped up a couple of times to defend her, and she humiliated him in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And now in this episode, now that Joel is gone, she's picked up that mantle. She flings her gun over her shoulder like Joel does. She rides in the front of the horse and Dina rides in the back like Joel did. And there's a lot of like this, is she Joel? Was Joel a bad influence on her? Or the whole nurture or nature thing that Gail brings up talking to Tommy.
Right.
Like, Gail's under the impression that nurturing is only like a small part of who you actually are, and it could push you one way or the other of what your nature is. And she believes that Ellie is already a violent person.
Yeah.
And Joel's the one who raised her, essentially, and he was a violent person because of everything that happened to him, because of Sarah, and how he survived through the first 20 years of the infection date and stuff.
So, I mean, first of all, Gail is wrong. Bless you. Because it's all, like, you can... I am a true crime podcast enthusiast. So, I mean, there are... millions of instances where you could say this was nature, this was nurture,
yeah,
this was both, this was, neither. Somebody gets a head injury as a young person, a child, or a young adult, and their personality flips on a dime. Well, that was nature, right? Or you can have somebody who had an awesome childhood and, awesome parents, and for all anybody knows, they never got a head injury and they're a horrible person, a horrible, serial killer. So she's wrong. But we saw in the first episode that we were introduced to Ellie back in season 1, and Joel beat up the guard so they could get out of the Fedra camp, and she had a smirk on her face.
Yeah, she enjoyed it.
So
yeah,
she was already there.
Yeah.
And I think that she just learned from Joel that it was maybe okay. I mean, it was at least okay around him. And I mean, she gets that it's not okay around other people,
right,
but not everyone,
right,
because there are people out there that it is okay to be that way around. Jessie, I mean, she's not ultra violent around Jessie, but Jessie's helping her learn how to fight,
do stuff. Yeah.
So there's people out there.
Yeah, I really like Jesse in the show, and I really like him in the game.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, I think she's both. She was that way before he showed up, and he is just given.
Yeah.
Joel gave her permission to express her enjoyment or her interest in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, even in the last season where she finds the gun at the gas station, and she finds the infected, and she tortures the infected guy who's trapped, and she Tony Montana's the gun, pointing the gun at herself in the mirror. Like there's stuff there. I know where everything goes, story-wise in the game. And I brought up earlier how they've talked about they're not going to necessarily follow verbatim with the game. But there's something that happens towards the finale of the game that I'm really interested in how they're going to approach it now that they have done all this time about talking about how Ellie is who she is and why she is the way she is and how she was raised, and the decisions she makes, even her decision to like, screw it, I'm not going to listen to the council, and she packs 700 rounds for 15 guns, but no blanket. She's still got her chucks on. She has no food.
Yeah.
And Dina's the one who shows up and like, how are you going to go there? She's like, I don't know, Northwest. And, and like, where's your blanket? Well, I wasn't going to take one. So
you're just going to walk on foot in your Chuck Taylors and walk in a northwesterly direction for
however long. But now that we have Dina as her, I wouldn't say moral compass, because she also wants retribution for what happened to Joel. But she is much more the word was right there and I just left. She's much more organized, much more thoughtful, much more level-headed when it comes to this. Even though she is emotional about what happened to Joel, she's much more level-headed about
Dina is me and Ellie is you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very
emotionally, and I'm like, nope, we have to go here at this time.
There are tons of different stories out there about average person going on a killing spree because something happens to their family, and I would be the guy who would try to go on the killing spree and die the first time I came across somebody because I didn't plan ahead. I just went.
I would be, get your hiking boots.
Yeah. You should watch me play Assassin's Creed Shadows, because I play Yasuke like I'm a battering ram. I'm just going through. Why did I die? Well, there's 17 people around you who are all 7 levels higher than you. I don't know why I lost. Let's talk about some of the. So we've talked about like kind of the main theme of what this episode was, which was the kind of the giving us a chance to grieve. Oh, I want to talk about the funeral scene. If we're talking about the grieving thing, I want to talk about the funeral scene. They buried all the bodies a few miles out away from camp, out in the plains in Wyoming. Beautiful location. We talked about the logistics of all of that. It's still close enough that they could go commune with their dead, but not so close that they can get infected diseased, like outside of the infection and stuff like that.
Right.
The cordyceps, but also they're not using up space in Jackson, which is they've already talked about the kind of low on space and housing and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
so that made a lot of sense. But that scene specifically of Ellie going over to Joel's gravesite, leaving the coffee beans, which
Yeah.
just I thought was such a nice. I thought it was gonna be the watch,
Yeah.
but the coffee beans is something just between her and Joel.
Yeah.
And that scene, as they said in the post show, was our chance for a funeral for Joel.
Yep.
And so I really appreciate that beat the kind of deal with that our grief that we lost Pedro. Now in gameplay, I keep bringing up gameplay, even though I know that they're going to do something different in the gameplay. But in gameplay, we have several different times that we go back where Joel and Ellie are. It's before times.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
and we know we're gonna get that because they've shown it in the trailers.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
know that we're gonna get because there were scenes in the trailers that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I'm very interested in how they're going to handle that. We know that Pedro Pascal rules the world right now. He was in Tokyo for Celebration, and then he flew to London for Thunderbolts premiere. He's not even in Thunderbolts, but he's got Fantastic Four coming out. He's got some, dude in armor taking care of a child through the galaxy.
he's the world's daddy right now.
Right, yeah, right. But so we know we're going to get that kind of scene coming forward. But I'm interested in how they're going to do that. Like I know we have one with Owen that was shown in the trailer.
Owen.
Gail's husband.
Oh, what was his Edwin? Edwin?
No,
I don't think it's Owen.
we know we have that episode coming.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a flashback episode, so we know Joel's going to be part of that at some point then. This episode starts with Ellie waking up in the hospital. She's got a tube in to help her breathe because she's probably got a punctured lung and stuff. She wakes up and the nurses are trying to calm her down, but all she sees is the golf club going into the head.
Yeah.
And we get we get Tommy going and cleaning up Joel's body after the fight, and everything has kind of calmed down. And Tommy's saying, "Send my love to Sarah," which just waterworks again. You didn't have to do that, Craig. You didn't have to do that. We are already emotional as it is. You don't have to bring up frickin' Sarah. And then they have the 3-month time jump. So now instead of being in the snow of winter, we're March time period, and they're still rebuilding from the attack.
Yeah. Well, there was a good 100 gravestones out there. So
Yeah.
I don't know if they've ever said how many people were in Jackson at that point.
No,
but
no, not
I
the
mean,
mill.
that's pretty, even if there's 1,000 people, that's 10%. There
Yeah.
was and then a lot of people were hurt, right? Because you
Yeah.
saw them in their little hospital thing or whatever right after the attack, and there was a lot of people in there. So people got to heal before they can even start to try to put the wall back together and all of that stuff.
I bring all that up because Tommy's on the council and has to answer to his wife because he loves his wife and he doesn't want to make a decision without her. But he leaves. He goes to Seattle, and so
in the game or
in the game,
Okay.
in the game, he goes to Seattle, and I only bring that up. Now, normally I wouldn't talk about spoilers within the game, but at this point in time, they're going to be so far off what they're going to do that there's just going to be points in there. There's somebody else who leaves Jackson who goes to Seattle, but I won't bring up who that is. But Tommy going is a big deal because he goes on his own revenge tour, and there's a lot of Ellie and Dina hearing about somebody else being in Seattle tearing up the WLF, and so Technology. For whatever reason, the software program that we use for our headphones, every once in a while, like at the 30-minute mark, just decides that we're going to talk like we're underwater. I was talking about Tommy going on his own revenge tour, and him going to Seattle, and Ellie and Dina hearing stories about somebody tearing up the WLF.
Right.
I'm wondering if they're going to do that because, like we talked about before we went underwater, that Tommy is in his late 50s and he was struggling to bang posts in,
right.
And Jesse had to kind of step up. Although young Manzino, who's playing Jesse, like that dude's just like just show off them guns while you're banging that post in. Maybe pull him up a little bit and kind of show up. Because everybody needs to swoon over somebody else now that Pedro's not in the show.
Well, that's true.
But I only bring it up because I'm questioning if they're going to do that part.
Yeah.
With Tommy.
Yeah. I mean, Tommy wasn't with Joel when he was killed either, and that was in the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I bring it up because I'm interested in what they're going to do with that part of the story.
Yeah.
That part of the story is very, I won't say integral, but very important to what's going on in Seattle. But the stuff that goes on in Seattle is so layered that you could probably ditch somebody. They could hear rumors of somebody being wrecked.
Well, and it could be, if in fact it was the WLF that attacked and killed the scarred people, then there could be other people out there on a revenge tour that have nothing to do with Jackson.
Yeah.
That they just came in and killed their people or whatever. So
I want to talk about the scarred first. The scarred are have survived all of this time on the belief in their prophet. And even though they talked about, as they were walking along the road, the father and the daughter were talking about all the stuff that, kind of who they are as people. And he said that our prophet died 10 years ago, but we still, live by her doctrine and stuff.
Right.
And in the game, the Scarred are like this cultish kind of behavior, who are always kind of the boogeyman in the background. They're not a big part of the game. There is a part that happens in the game with the Scarred that makes you kind of question like decision makings that's going on with different characters, which is the whole point of what's going on in the second game, is questioning decisions that characters are making. But their boogeyman-ness comes up because they don't use guns; they use hammers and bows and arrows. Yeah. They showed the hammers, and I was like, "Ooh, that's important." Because there's some.
Or is it?
Yeah, or is it? And that's there's going to be a lot of that conversation for us going the rest of the way. Season 1, like we were talking about earlier, was pretty close to the story. Yeah. And Season 2, now that they have some time to actually flesh some stuff out, give us a little bit more emotional kind of connection with things, we can have that kind of time. We can have another Bill and Frank episode.
Right. That
we can have with Owen, Edwin, Moses,
Edgar,
whatever. I also want to talk about the WLF. The WLF are a militaristic group of survivors that are not Fedra. They are not federally done. They're not federally controlled. But they're also not like the Fedra that was in Kansas City that were abusing their power to keep their power.
Right.
They're much more of a Roman garrison and an English town. As long as everyone follows the essential basic rules, everybody's cool. But they're also well armored, they're well equipped,
Yeah, they
and
got a tank.
and they've got and they and they're well fed, and they're well taken care of, but they're also very rigid in their beliefs that
Right.
this is the only way to do things.
Well, I mean, it's like kind of like I was talking about before. In a post-apocalyptic world, everybody is going to. This is what's going to happen. There's going to be these pockets of people that have taken historical things that have happened in the human history and recreate that, because in as far as they're concerned, that worked. The Roman army did work for a very long time.
Yep.
So that's a that's a good example.
Yeah.
The government, the U.S. government, kind of how the police system, the army system, that kind of thing has worked for quite a long time. So that's that makes sense that the commune thing has worked. The cult, we call it a cult because that's how we see it, but the people in it don't see it that way. That system has worked. So all of these little factions are going to take over. They're going to assume these different aspects.
Right.
And,
right.
And you're just kind of walking around trying to find the one that works for your beliefs, and then you're going to join that group.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that the show is giving us, and the game did this too, all these different views of how the world should be post-apocalyptic, and spending time on what your values are and how you circle around other people with the same values. Right. And I that's one of the things that I'm not a big post-apocalyptic kind of storyteller unless it's aliens. Like Falling Skies, I was going to bring up Falling Skies because Noah Wiley's character was a professor of American history, and they set up the resistance against the alien invasion as the Revolutionary Army in the Americas. And so that kind of concept is really kind of interesting. I really like that kind of concept. I don't want fungus crawling through my water pipes while I'm trying to do things.
You don't get a choice on what your post-apocalyptic, what your apocalyptic catalyst
is. Yeah. Is there anything else in this episode that we want to talk about? I think we've kind of covered everything that was like the major points. Yeah. If you are interested in these long-form conversations, please follow us here on the Spotify side and share with your friends if they're into these also. And if you're on the YouTube side, please follow us here, hit the bell for notifications. We are also doing movie reviews and trailer reactions on the YouTube side. And we're also doing reviews for Andor and Doctor Who. So those are all on the YouTube side, and the longer form versions are on the Spotify side as well. So follow us on all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't hurt to click a button. Also follow us on all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, and I'm writing for the Geekiary. All those links are in the description down below. Till next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night now.